So we're going to Esther chapter 3 and chapter 4. We'll start out today. It says, "And after these things did Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above the princes that were with him." And so when chapter 3 starts off with "after these things," it is saying after Esther has won the beauty contest, she is queen, and then there's this plot to kill the king that has been discovered by Mordecai, and Esther goes and gets the chamberlains. I can't remember if I can say these names right. Bigthan and Teresh. Anyways, it says in, let's back up, 21 in verse 21 in chapter 2. "In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus." So there's the plot to kill the king. "The thing was known to Mordecai, so Mordecai found it out. He told it to Esther the queen, and Esther certified the king, therefore, in Mordecai's name." So she goes and tells the king what's going on. Inquisition was made of the matter. It was found out. They both were hanged on the tree. And it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. So he was keeping records in the king's chronicles of things that were going on. You will see these records come back later in the story, which is very important part of this story, because it's like the plot twist in that chapter. I believe it's chapter 6. And so then chapter 3 opens up with "after these things." So after all of that, somehow or another, some guy named Haman comes into the picture, and he is promoted and set above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gates bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had commanded concerning him, but Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said to Mordecai, "Why transgressest thou the king's commandment?" Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, so these two people were constantly talking to him, but Mordecai hearkened not to them. And they went and told Haman. Ain't it just like two little tattletales to stir up some trouble? To see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. So here we see Mordecai has let the cat out of the bag about being a Jew, after he tells Esther to hide and conceal the fact that she was a Jew. And so when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not and did not reverence him, then Haman was full of wrath. So we see this wrath come over Haman, and he is seeking. When you read throughout here, you see that he is seeking, he's got a plot and a plan to get rid of the Jews. And so how they do that in chapter 7 says, "In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, however you say that, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There's a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them or to allow them to be." So he's coming up with this plot to get rid of all the Jews, and he is bringing this to the king and saying, these people that are supposed to be assimilated Remember in the last video we talked about being assimilated means that they were to leave behind everything, all their customs, and they were to become like the people in Persia there in that place, like speak the Persian ways, their language, dress the way they dress, eat the way they conduct your life as if you are no longer the old you, and they were Jews. But Mordecai was not getting that far assimilated. So Mordecai and Esther had stayed behind, remember, after the edict was given by Cyrus to go back to Jerusalem. But had they not stayed behind, yes, I believe God could have raised up another, but they had stayed behind, and God had a plan for Mordecai and Esther. And so Haman, you know, the devil, he's got a plot. He's got a plot to take you out. But God's got a purpose and a plan for you to keep you in. So God's plans always prevail over that of the enemy. The devil was the one working behind Haman to do this, to get rid of the Jews. And looking back, remember how Pharaoh had thrown the baby boys into the river Nile to kill them. Haman tries to kill. Later on in the New Testament, Herod slaughters those 2 years and younger of the Hebrew boys. And then we see in our history how it happened in Germany and the concentration camps and all. But God is sovereign on the throne. And so he is pulling strings here, and in his sovereignty and his providence and his way and ability to be God and to keep covenant and to make sure that his plan and purpose throughout every generation on earth, every detail of what God has promised, he doesn't miss it. He doesn't forget it. He doesn't fail to do it. He doesn't change his mind about it. And so Mordecai has made Haman so angry that Haman is wanting to kill all the Jews. And then when chapter 4 opens up, it says, when Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry. And it came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And so you see, Mordecai has not only kept his position as a Jew not to bow to another or pay reverence to another, because they only bow to the one true living God. Also, we see here that Mordecai is rending his clothes and putting on sackcloth and ashes and crying out, which is another Jewish custom. So he's coming back to doing what he knows is right in God's eyes, according to God's plan. Though we don't see the name of God in our English Bible, if you can read Hebrew and know acrostics, you can find the Lord's name hidden and concealed in there, just like Mordecai and Esther was hidden and concealed. But you see God's hand at work in the story here. And so whenever you read on, you get down to chapter 4, verse 4, it says, and Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it to her, so that the queen was exceeding grieved. And she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, to take away his sackcloth from him, but he refused. And so then called Esther for Hatak or Hatach or Hatach, or however you say that person's name, when I read through Esther all these other times, all throughout the years, I never really paid attention to this feller or person, whoever it was that Esther called for. But this person played an important role here. They were the go-between between Esther and Mordecai. And so she had to have had a lot of confidence in him. And so for him to do this probably also kind of probably put his own, I don't know, if not his own life, maybe his own way of life might have been at stake here, because they were concealing something from the king, that she was a Jewess. And so she sends this feller back and forth. They have this conversation between Esther and Mordecai. And Mordecai gets to the place to where, let's see, where's it at? Let's go down to verse 13. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. See, Mordecai had sent word to Esther, you've got to go in before the king and plead for your people's lives. And she reminds Mordecai that it would be unlawful for her to do so, and she could be put to death, except that the king would hold out the golden scepter to her that she may live. And so he's reminding her that, don't you think that just because you're the queen in the king's castle that you will escape. And then in verse 14 it says, for if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place, but thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. He was letting her know she's not going to get away just because she's the queen. And that God, he knew God, of the promises that God had made to Abraham to bring forth a people, the Hebrew people, the children of God, that would become the Jewish nation in Jerusalem and in Israel that we see today. For the king, Jesus, would have to come through that line. The Messiah would have to come. So Mordecai, he knows all this, and he's reminding Esther that God's going to take care. He don't use the word God, but he knows and she knows that God's going to take care of business. But you, Sister Esther, because you did not do what you were put on the earth to do at this time, deliverance will arise from another place. God will raise up deliverers. He did that in the book of Judges. He's God. He's always going to be God. He's going to do what he does, and that is deliver his people. And so then in verse 15, then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer, go and gather all the Jews that are present in Shushan. So she's saying, you get all the Jews that are present and fast for me. Don't eat, don't drink for 3 days or nights. And then she says, I also and my maids will fast likewise. So I will go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So she comes to her senses and realizes that, okay, I am put in this position. God allowed this to be so. And so God's got a purpose for me here, more than just to wear this pretty crown and to take up space and be spoiled in the palace. And no, you've got a purpose. And sometimes your purpose doesn't look like that it's going to end well, but we walk by faith and not by sight. Everything that they were doing was by faith, faith in God. And so you'll have to pick up here and read on if you want to read ahead. I'm going to try. and do my best to go through the rest of this with you, if that be the case. If not, then, but you go through and you see. I will give you a little bit of a hint that in chapter 6, everything is going to shift. That is going to be like the hinge that a door swings on. And once that door swings, you'll see the flip side of this story. And so you see things looking like they are going down, and this bad thing is about to happen, but then God turns it around and things start looking up. And so I hope and pray that this has been a blessing to you. And so until next time.